Winds up to 145 miles per hour. Damages totaling more than $30 billion. But it was your iReports that caught the true power of Hurricane Ike.
All right. I cannot tell if that is the tornado siren. That's the tornado siren. We need to get inside. Come on, right now. Go, go, go.
Few weather events had the impact of a hurricane. The deadly storms take both a physical and emotional toll.
Our shot tonight is that, a remarkable photo. It shows a solitary home left in the wake of Hurricane Ike's massive destruction around Gilchrist, Texas. Somehow this home appears to have survived. It's during a hurricane or a natural disaster like that really iReports become incredibly important, because they're able to be in places. The iReporters, the citizen journalists, are able to, they're in places, they're in their homes, they're places that we can't necessarily get to, sometimes that are completely cut off, and they're able to inform everyone else around them, everyone in their communities and the global community, really, through CNN, about what's happening in that one little slice of the storm. It's remarkable, though, Pam, when you look at this, and just the fact that it is standing when all of your neighbors' homes have just vanished. I mean, that has got to be just a bizarre feeling.
Yes, it is a bizarre feeling. It is a beautiful home. We worked real hard to get that home to looking the way it does, and it's amazing that it's sitting out there by itself.
In the heart of the storm, CNN coverage is enhanced by iReporters also on the scene.
Just in Florida, the waves continue to crash.
You can see this. This is one road where there's three houses in a row where like 3 30-foot trees have fallen.
And this surge is just incredible.
So from too much water to not nearly enough, thousands forced to evacuate, hundreds of homes burned. When wildfires hit California, our iReporters were there in the heat of the moment.
That's the Riviera burning there. Oh my God.
I was probably within maybe a couple hundred yards of the fire.
How are they going to get this under control?
The Pacific Coast burning. 3 separate fires reaching from Orange County to north of Santa Barbara, over 40,000 acres.
The most amazing thing about covering these fires is how it's just an assault on the senses. I mean, you see the flames, you can feel the heat, you can actually taste the smoke when you're breathing it in. It's just an amazing thing.
The winds were gusting somewhere up in 60, 70 miles an hour, so it was kind of terrifying in a way.
Now they're saying between 100 and 200 homes were lost because of this fire, and it was an amazing firestorm last night.
A lot of times it's not as easy to tell that, whoa, this is dangerous. This time it was pretty clear to everybody, this is dangerous, we've got to get out.
30,000 California residents forced to leave their homes. From mobile homes to multi-million-dollar mansions, over 900 homes destroyed. When massive floods engulfed the Midwest this summer, iReports gave us a look at every affected area. More than 60% of the iReports received during the floods aired on various CNN platforms. Stories of families displaced, possessions lost, and the fight to rebuild lives. And sometimes returning home after a natural disaster is the hardest part.
You want me to read you the definition of disaster? Yeah. Disaster, any happening that causes great harm or damage, serious or sudden misfortune.
iReporter Andrew Sherburne knows disaster firsthand.
It was shocking to paddle up to the house and see it, halfway submerged in the water.
From iReporter to CNN reporter, Ed Lavandera spent 2 weeks in the flood zone, traveling home with residents as the waters began to recede.
It's really sad. It's a beautiful old house with big, thick oak woodwork and hard oak floors. That you just can't buy houses like these houses are built, and it's so sad that the floors will probably be all ruined. But it's only a structure.
And I've been with so many people in that initial moment, where they're opening up the door and they don't know what they're about to see, and it's and almost to a person, it is always worse than what they imagined.
It's weird how you rearrange your expectations. You think, oh, a couple inches in our house isn't going to be a big deal, and then we're like, oh well, it's okay if we get a few inches, and then it's like, okay, it's okay if we, get 2 feet, and now we're just praying that our house doesn't wash away.
Some of the biggest drama of the year took place on the other side of the world. We'll show you images you never would have seen if it weren't for iReport.
iReporters help us see stories around the world, giving us rare insight. Right now, you're looking at some of them, featuring our troops serving in Iraq and Afghanistan. And while the wars are still making news, other areas of the world have been making some pretty big headlines as well.
Yeah, none much bigger than Mumbai. We can start there. The day before Thanksgiving in the U.S., terrorists attacked tourist areas in India's financial capital. This is where iReporters can bring us inside a story in a way few others can. iReporters Mark and Tabitha Jansen shoot this vacation video of Mumbai's Taj Mahal Hotel. Just 2 days later, the Taj and 6 other locations in Mumbai attacked and overrun by terrorists. Melody George heard booming sounds coming from the train station near her hotel and headed to the hotel lobby.
The lights were turned off and people were sort of gathered around the television, and it appeared that they had locked the doors to make sure no one could come in if the terrorists were still roaming the city.
CNN's Andrew Stevens was in Mumbai reporting on the growing Indian economy.
As we got to the Oberoi Hotel, we were literally had the indicator on turning to go into the front entrance, and the doors burst open and people came panicking. It's the only way to describe it. They were panicking, running out, fleeing into the streets.
I had had breakfast at the Taj that morning, and my boyfriend and I had discussed staying at the Taj that night because it was such a nice hotel that we may have been at the Taj that night if we had decided to do that.
iReporter Andrea Albergo shot these pictures the morning after the attacks. She says the streets, normally busy and crowded, were eerily empty. The attacks were a reminder for some iReporters.
The terrorist attack in Mumbai is the evidence that terrorism is still a growing problem.
For others, the attacks were a life-changing tragedy. Aaron Butler submitted pictures of his sister and stepfather, Naomi and Alan Shear. He knew they were in the Oberoi Hotel when the terrorists struck and asked for any information about them. A later iReport confirmed the grim reality. We know now that Naomi and Alan have been killed in the Oberoi Cafe. iReporter shared his sadness. Jill in Atlanta wrote, "This website has created a family and we all feel for your loss." It is a grief shared by families of nearly 180 people killed, and those around the world who realized that the threat of terror is still very much alive. We turn to Africa now. Violence erupts after Kenya votes for a new president.
The days after the election turned to chaos across the country, and it is all captured on camera. Kenya erupts. The presidential election explodes into violence, turning one of Africa's most stable countries into a war zone. iReporter Jane Samuels was volunteering in the region, driving into the city of Kisumu before heading home to the States.
We could see some smoke in the background, we could see some fires, there were people in the roads, and they told us that the city was, quote, on fire, and that we would not be able to continue to drive into the city.
Opposition supporters claim the vote was rigged and stormed streets across the country to show their frustration. In Nairobi, iReporter Duncan Waswa captured these images of people running for safety. CNN correspondent and Kenya native Zane Verji became part of the story when paramilitaries hit her with a tear gas canister.
They hit my back. Yeah, it's okay, I'm standing.
It was a very scary and difficult moment in an area that was probably one of the most familiar that I've been with throughout my life in Kenya.
In the end, a political deal. Both sides would share power, but the violence leaving scars on a country that was considered an example of stability in Africa. Russia tried to make a statement to Western nations in 2008, don't underestimate us.
Yeah, the Russian army invaded the former Soviet nation of Georgia in late summer, and iReporters were there filming the Russian troops and showing us the Georgian response. August in Tbilisi, Georgia. iReporters capture the Georgian president and his citizens singing the national anthem. As Russian tanks steamroll through their country.
I must confess that I never expect that I'd be afraid of Russian tanks rolling into my city.
Georgia's military quickly overwhelmed by the lightning-fast Russian force. But citizens in the capital made a stand, rallying, telling Russia, go home, pleading for the West to pay attention.
Today we tell to you, if you want to learn something about freedom, come to Georgia. Georgia.
To see the tenacity of its people, their love for their country, to see an entire society rally together in the face of impossible odds really was an honor to witness.
iReporters overwhelmingly showcased the Georgian side, but some shared pro-Russian stances, blaming Georgia for provoking the war by attacking South Ossetia. All this as displaced citizens made their way to refugee camps. iReporters moved enough to share their stories.
I'm joined now by George Kavishitnadze. He is a photographer living in Tbilisi who submitted these images of a refugee camp there. He joins me right now, live from his home. George, tell me how life has changed for you just in the past 10, 11 days.
Hello, everyone. I mean, life has changed like from day to night. I can't stay in the office and not to do anything with what's happening, and what I could do, I found it myself. I can take pictures, I can show what's happening here to the world, and iReport website gave me this opportunity.
Nearly 2 weeks after Russian troops entered Georgian territory, the big retreat into South Ossetia. The conflict over. The deep impression lives on, though, through the eyes of iReporters. The word expression of a child, hands clasped against oppression. The waving flag, a symbol of a nation's pride, a people living history. In Mumbai, in Kenya, in Georgia, we saw violence, we saw aggression. But in some parts of the world, we saw sheer tragedy.